Yo, what's up? This is Vic Mensa. You in tune with Hard Knock TV. Don't touch that dial.
One of my favorite songs is Heaven on Earth.
Heaven only knows.
That is a crazy song. The way that you're able to put yourself into the three perspectives, and especially the third verse, to actually put yourself into the shooter perspective of somebody who took the life of one of your friends. Tell me a little bit about what the process was like to even begin to write that song, and where you had to go mentally to be able to put yourself in that space.
I had the concept for the song. I had written down a concept called Conversations with Dare, who is the subject of the song. And I had written down that concept months before I actually made the song, maybe a month or two. And then I was in the studio in Chicago with Smoko Ono and Poppy Beats, and Smoko played that sample. And immediately I was like, okay, this is for that concept, because it was like, this could be heaven right here on earth. And you know, that was like a, just the passing of my big brother Dare. That was something that has popped up in my music multiple times. And I've written songs kind of about it, but never like, I've written songs dedicated to him, but I hadn't really told the story. And that's what I was doing with this album, was storytelling. So I was like, this is an important story, because it was right at that age. I remember I was talking to one of his best friends, one of Cam's best friends, my boy Brian, who has a brand in Chicago called Sir and Madam. And I was like 17. And it was right either before that summertime that Dare got killed, or right after, I don't remember, but he was just giving it to me straight. He was like, you know, you're 17 years old now. This is the age at which you're gonna start to lose people close to you forever. You know what I mean? And that's just the reality of the situation. I had to give that same reality to my younger sister years later, which is like a hard thing to do to somebody you love, but it's the truth coming from where we come from. And so I had that concept, and then I heard the music, and it just really came out very easily. Well, at first it was just two verses. It was just me to him and then him to me. And I went home, and I knew I needed another verse, and my girl gave me the idea. She was like, you should do a verse as his killer. And so I went and I did it the next day.
Was it kind of cathartic to be able to humanize the person and what they might be going through?
Yeah, you know, it was like necessary, honestly, to humanize the person. And very oftentimes, the victims and perpetrators of these inner city murders are turned into numbers. And you forget that both of these people are real people, and they do what they do for a reason, and they're in a pattern. The killer, as I surmised, maybe just had a daughter, was maybe just trying to feed his daughter.
Right.
Didn't mean to. He was afraid. He was fearing for his life. Who knows? But for me to see him in a light of empathy that like removed that hatred for me. I didn't have to hold that in my heart anymore. I didn't have to hold hatred towards this person that killed my friend, because that hurts the person holding hatred more than anybody else. You know what I mean?
That's a bar right there.
It's the truth though. To hate, that hurts you more than it hurts whoever you're hating. You the one gotta wake up with that shit in your that knot in your stomach every morning. You know what I'm saying? I would hate to see, that's funny. You know what I mean? I would really not like to be one of these tiki torch racists that's like going to sleep and waking up with this like extreme resentment of everybody different from them. And I had to remove that hatred I was feeling and that resentment I was feeling towards this person that killed my friend, because it's toxic, you know.
I was actually at the show talking to a fan, and they asked me if you were nice, like if you like were approachable, which I think is interesting, because I feel like there's this perception that because you talk about like serious subjects or something that you're somehow unapproachable.
Yeah, it's funny. Like a lot of the times recently, I had some like radio interviews, or it was online show stuff where I was turned up on somebody and I'll come into another interview and then people will be like, don't fight me. Right. And no, I'm not like that, you know. But that's the nature of the game, though, is that people only get a certain window into who I am, so they might see me a certain way depending on what they've seen. But I try to not pay too much attention to it. I pretty much lived my whole life with people misunderstanding me, so it's not a new thing to me. I love people, and I love meeting new people and like being good to people and hoping that people are good to me. I'm the guy that has just been overly gracious and loyal, you know, to a lot of fucking disloyalty and disrespect. But it means more to me to put forth a positive energy than it does to take in a negative energy. I never smile in photos. They probably think I'm super angry all the time. I'm just like, I don't smile because it's not funny. If you say something funny, I'm gonna smile. Right. Motherfuckers got jokes, I'll laugh.
Let's get into one of my other favorite songs, Wings. You got a chance to work with P. I know NERD was a big influence on you. Talk a little bit about working with him, and then tell me a little bit about the concept of the song. I love and just seeing it. This is my first time seeing it live today, and the juxtaposition of the chorus and the being open, and then when it hits and like the energy. Tell me about that.
Pharrell is the god, you know. Pharrell is the music god, the fashion god, the culture god, lyrical god, and I've been the biggest Pharrell fan for like 10 years now. I saw Pharrell performing with NERD right after Seeing Sounds came out on the Glow in the Dark tour with Kanye in Chicago at the United Center.
It was them and Lupe, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that tour. That was a great tour.
That was a fucking phenomenal tour. Lupe Fiasco with Food and Liquor, and NERD with Seeing Sounds. Like, I mean, I was just blown away. I wasn't even an NERD fan at that point. I wasn't even fully ready for what was going on. I just knew the energy was ridiculous. And Pharrell has always been super inspirational to me because he transcended genre and racial boundaries, and he made music that took influence from rock music and punk music and hardcore music and also hip hop and soul and funk. And he just didn't give a fuck. And that's how I feel. I don't give a fuck about any of those conventions. None of those things matter to me. They don't mean anything to me. So to be able to work with Pharrell was a dream come true. I used to always tell people, if they ask me, who's the one person you want to work with? I say Pharrell, 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 Pharrell. And I believe in manifesting things into reality. So when I did end up really getting with Pharrell, because I got with him and he like loved some music from the album very early on, and we didn't actually work. Then I got back with him. A friend of mine named Kenna put me back in tune with him, and I got in the studio with him. Shout out to Kenna always. And I got in the studio with Pharrell. I knew for this album that in the period of time that I was mainly speaking about, that like my struggles with addiction and depression and just these dark voices in my head and the fucking devil on my shoulder was a real pertinent and necessary concept. So I tried it a couple times, and when I got with Pharrell, I had just went through some crazy shit. And somebody in Chicago, as always, was trying to, well, successfully, you know, robbing me, lying to me, and I was stressed. And Pharrell, I came in the room and I told him the story because I was just, you know, visibly upset. And Pharrell was like, you know, you're lucky for two reasons. One, because you don't have to be the person that looks himself in the mirror at night knowing that they have done this to someone else. And two, because you have the ability to move on. And then he just played the music for Wings, and he had the hook already, and he played the music, and just made me think about moving on, you know, just flying away from that negativity as opposed to being caught up in it, because I spent time, which I talk about in the album, being influenced by this loss in heaven on earth, or being influenced by this personal turmoil and like a home wrecker, and, you know, continuing that cycle in a song like Down for Some Ignorance. when I'm taking all this negativity being thrown at me and I'm giving it right back. And I didn't grow from that. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go anywhere I wanted to be. So when Pharrell gave me that game, like, you have the ability to move on, and he played this music saying wings, spread my wings and fly, it just made sense to me. So it was like the perfect moment for me to tell that story and for me to really articulate a lot of things in the song that I wasn't able to say personally, that I wasn't able to really tell anybody, you know, and to say it better than I've ever said it. So when I was doing that song, I fucking closed all the blinds in the fucking studio and locked the door, and I was just in this room pacing back and forth, like fucking tears running down my face, just like letting myself have it, you know, because I had to get all those things off my fucking chest, get all those like the incessant cacophony of voices in my head. Like, I had to give them a moment so that I could just let them die.
That second verse is crazy, because I feel like a lot of us deal with the inner voices, the inner demons, but for you to actually, like, one, let people in to see that, and then two, to like really let it out, you know, and let that emotion out. I think it's freeing for a lot of people to be like, oh shit, I'm not the only one that goes to that. Vic goes to that. Touching on Pharrell, I actually worked with him the last 2 years because I executive produced his radio show. I think one of the things that he does best is hold a mirror to artists. Depending, like, you come in with your energy, and he has a way of reflecting it so that you can see yourself at that moment, which sounds like that's what happened in the session.
Pharrell's a wizard. He's not normal. You know, he's not a regular person. And the music he makes reflects that. Something that's funny is I don't always get the best reviews and the best, like, industry reception of things I do. I get way better real people reception than I do reviews and industry shit. And I remember one day I was looking to see, because like Pitchfork gave me a pretty shitty review, and I was looking at one of my favorite albums, NERD, In Search Of, and I saw that Pitchfork gave fucking In Search Of a 6, you know, and I'm like, okay, man, you know, I'm like, okay, because this album meant everything to me. This album inspired me and a generation of people like me. This album inspired me to make music that I've made. This album is, you know, a major building block in the careers of people like Tyler, the Creator, or Frank Ocean. And just seeing that Pharrell is like had an unwavering commitment to the way he feels and to the sounds as he sees them and to life as he wants it to be, that inspired me to just stay on my path and not worry about these niggas and what they're saying.
Yeah, critics can't put words to feelings. It's like they can't tell somebody else how they feel.
I mean, critics, by and large, are failed musicians, failed rappers. They had bands, they were singers, and they didn't succeed as artists. So they've made a career, many of them, as critics of artists. You go on ESPN, they don't just have fucking Joe Schmo who didn't make the basketball team in high school telling you about Stephen Curry's performance, right, because he's not qualified. And that's the way a lot of music critics are. Music is one of the only places where the vast base of the critics have no qualification in the actual field itself.
Which makes it hard for them to empathize with artists.
They just don't know. They don't really understand. You know, it's the same thing. You look at football, it's like the people that are the commentators in a football game, they know about the game. They've largely played the game. These people were on the field. They really know the ins and outs of the game, so they have a right to speak on it. Music critics, most of them, they just don't. They don't have a right to speak on it. They don't know how it works. They didn't succeed in that. You look at, I guarantee you, if you take a list of 10 music critics, top music critics, and you see how many of them have released an album, you know, or how many of them actually have been in this game, it's going to be maybe 2 at the most. It's not going to be people that you respect their opinion because they actually contributed to the game.
And most of them are hype beasts anyways.
It's not real.
Getting back to the album, in The Fire Next Time you say, out of the fire, I found the fire inside. Can you tell me a little bit about what that line means to you?
Yeah, so that record, I was like, one of the last records I made, and I knew I was making this like stage experience. I knew that I was doing something theatrical, and I was really coming from the place of like a record like Down for Some Ignorance or Wings, where I really like just like burned in all of this chaos. And from that, I wanted to do the Fire Next Time to really dictate and explain the way that I took that chaos and I took that amorphous rage and focused it into something that was uplifting and something that was progressive for me, because I spent time being at the bottom of the fire, and then I wanted to be the smoke. I wanted to rise away from it. And it took time, but I figured out how to do that.
I feel like that's what makes it more relatable. It's like
everybody goes through shit, man, and it's like fucking the Rothschild kid somewhere right now. I guarantee you that there's somebody with that last name and with that $1 billion bank behind them that feels like shit about their situation. Maybe this girl doesn't like them, or maybe, you know, whatever problems they may have. You can't minimize somebody's struggle because of their situation, because everybody's struggle is real. It's just different shapes and forms. And for me, you know, I took my real struggles and I just found a way to harness that energy that was tearing me apart to really build me back together.
It's interesting that you brought up empathy, because I've seen in a couple interviews where you've talked about Trump supporters and you've talked about the pain that they're going through. How did you get, I mean, that's a very mature, you're 24, that's a very mature approach to have, to say, I feel like the majority of the media doesn't even have it right now. Everybody wants to be polar and put people here and here. And to hear you say, hey, even these people in middle America, they're displacing their anger. When they're blaming Mexicans, it's not a Mexican thing. Right. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, you know, I'm 24 years old. That's older than some of my best friends got to be. And I don't feel like a child, you know. I'm 24 years old, and I got good friends that are 23 years old that are doing 20 years in prison right now. Tell him he's a child, you know. He gonna be an adult by the time he leaves, if he ever does. So I don't really approach the things I'm doing from like a perspective of like my excuses that I'm young, you know. I made it way older than a lot of brothers from where I'm from make it. And with that song, I wanted to paint an ideal, you know, because without ideals, I don't think you can have any real significant move towards change, because I'm not just working to make like tomorrow the same as today. I want to make it better. And that song is about that. It's about having empathy and having an understanding that at the end of the day, people disagree with you, and a lot of them are wrong. And people hate, and people kill, and people steal every day. Like people are people, they do what they do from a place of pain themselves. Most people causing pain, hurt people. It's something that we know to be true. And so I just wanted to kind of shine a light on why we have so many people hurting others right now, you know, because they're hurting in their own ways. And that's why they killed Fred Hampton, because Fred Hampton was like, I'm gonna get the poor whites, and I'm gonna get the Asians, and I'm gonna get the Mexicans. We go do this rainbow coalition. That's when it starts to get dangerous, is when you start to break down those barriers that are dividing the working class from each other, and start to break down those barriers, and you start to look up to the big house on the hill, you know, and think about who's really profiting and benefiting off of all of our infighting. Because the vast majority of the people that elected this racist, bigot, misogynist to the highest office in our nation are poor white people who feel left behind, and poor white people who are dying from opioid addictions and whose jobs in the coal mines have disappeared, and they're looking for somebody to blame. And they're being misled into thinking that those people they want to blame are Mexicans, are blacks, are Muslims, when really the people they need to blame are the people at the top making money off of them, making money off their suffering. They need to blame Pfizer, and they need to blame the people that produce Xanax and Percocets. They need to blame those people. So I just wanted to do something that could kind of like put a real perspective to the pain and suffering we got going on.
Last question, you're about to go on tour with Jay.
I'm excited to be going on tour with Hov right now specifically because as a lifelong Jay-Z fan, this is like the first album he's done where he really removed the mask and he just let you see his truths verbatim and literally, and didn't keep it so coded. He did a book called Decoded because his whole catalog has been coded, and there's a lot of deeper messages if you pay attention, but this one you don't really have to try too hard to understand the truths of his being. And you know, that's dope to me because like I said, I've been a fan of Hov forever, and I always wanted to hear this. She told me her favorite Hov song is You Must Love Me. She's like, I'll never hear him perform that. But you know, if you come to this show, you're really gonna hear him performing those stories. You know, he's talking in this album about how he shot his brother and like, you know, selling drugs to people he loves. It's just real things that he's talking about, man. And I feel like in my own way, in my own experience, I'm talking about real things that really happened to me too. And I want to be a part of this movement and culture right now that like starts to shift the needle away from the mindless bullshit into something that we can really use tangibly to make our people greater.
How much of a role does Dion No ID have? Because I feel like he was instrumental in some of the conversations he had with Jay to kind of like get him to kind of like let down that mask and be himself. And I feel like for what I've heard, he also had some conversations with you in terms of like also kind of pushing, you know, the boundaries of going into personal stories.
Well, Dion is important to music because Dion wants to create art that says something, that means something. And that's where he's at in his career. And also with No ID, I'm a lifelong fan. Common was my favorite rapper growing up and still is one of my favorite rappers of all time. So those albums that they made together, One Day It All Makes Sense and Resurrection, those records really shaped a lot of my perspectives in music and also just in life. So, you know, Dion is instrumental in my progression as a man, as a person, before ever even meeting him or connecting with him. So at this point in time, you know, I'm just blessed to be able to be working with one of my idols.